Hey everybody, this is Jim Richardson of Animateducated, and this is part one of my interview with Sergio Pablos. I hope you enjoy it. I want to welcome Sergio Pablos to Animateducated. Here he is from Spain.
Thank you for having me.
You're
Hello.
welcome. Thank you. I'm going to be thanking you a lot in this episode, so don't be surprised. I want to thank you for doing the like in 2016. I got in contact with you. You did an email interview on my Animation Educated blog, and I really want to thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Spa Studios, you produced Klaus. You guys are doing great on that. I love all the videos you have on there. A lot of information for young animators. I was wondering, when right now we're in the summer of the COVID-19, and how is that affecting your studio or your crew or you?
Well, I mean, we went through the confinement for about, I think it was 11 weeks, and gladly it caught us at a time where we could work remotely. We sent everybody home, and we continued to work normally. And just last week, we were able to get back. And we have now, because the crew has scaled down, we have a lot of room, so we can keep safe distancing going and all that. So far, so good. Nobody has coughed yet. So I'll let you know how much we panic when that happens.
With animation, you don't have to be in a studio. You can do it remotely. And now we're learning to do that a lot.
You can.
Yeah.
It slows down. It certainly slows down. I mean, we noticed that, the communication, it's more difficult. But I mean, gladly, the kind of tasks we have to do right now are kind of exploratory. So because there's new projects, so at this stage, we would normally free our crew to go and do some research and try a few pieces that are inspiration and all that. So it's very appropriate for this time. Once we hit a job that requires the hitting deadlines, I'm glad we are now back at the studio, because I think that will be more challenging to hit.
Glenn Keane won the Oscar for Dear Basketball. Bruce Smith was a co-director of Hair Love. There's James Lopez, who's doing Hullabaloo, and yourself. Do you see yourself as kind of like an animation pioneer?
I don't do this for the attention, if that's what
Right.
you're asking. No, I do this because I feel like, I wanted to be an animator since I was 5. Like, I was that kid who used to love to draw. And when I found out cartoons were drawings, I thought there's no higher form of drawing than bringing your drawings to life. So I want to do that, and I stuck with it, and I enjoyed learning about it. And my time at Disney was so much fun and so challenging, but and I felt like I was growing as an artist all the time. I owe this medium so much that when I saw that it needed help and I was in a position to help it, I thought it was my obligation to do something about it. So I'm just trying to do my part, because I deep down know that the reasons why we abandoned traditional animation were they just don't hold up to scrutiny. I mean, people still think that. I was reading some comments on online today. Said, well, it must have been because it was cheaper and easier to do in 3D. I was like, well, not really. It wasn't that. You would imagine that's the case, but I mean, you can make films in 2D that are more expensive than 3D, yes, but Klaus was done under a very reasonable budget, and I think deep down it's just how much you want to, what kind of thing you're trying to do. You can get it overcomplicated in any medium, right? But that's not the reason. Does it look dated? Yeah, but it doesn't have to look dated. You can keep moving it. You can keep new styles, new approaches, and so what we consider the 2D look is not a fixed thing. It's kind of an amalgam of the 90s style animation that we'll have in our memory, but that doesn't have to be that way. So all those reasons just didn't feel like there were sound reasons to abandon an art form. And I always felt like 2D, 3D stop motion, cut out animation, those were just tools that you could choose to use as a storyteller. And I feel particularly comfortable with traditional animation. So, as a storyteller, that's my tool. And you don't tell a painter that he shouldn't use watercolors because he's got oil available, right? I mean, that's not. So,
Yeah, yeah.
oil is so much better, man. Why it's so cheaper? And those are not good reasons. It's an art form, and the fact that if we end up putting a good story together, and the only form that story exists is in this one, if you want to enjoy it, you'll have to watch it in that format, you know. And that's more or less the approach we have.
Do you see animation industry going? Do you see it progressing? You know,
if we look back into this decade, you know, a few years from now, we'll see that it's actually not doing bad at all. I mean, like we've been in much worse shape. You have companies that are playing it very safe and going with the franchise and the sequel route, you know, but you'll have the outliers who are taking risks and trying different things out and standing out, you know, and but that will also create a reaction, and I think even the big studios are starting to react too. So, you know, I think it's an interesting time. Not everything that comes out is going to be gorgeous and the beautiful stories, you know, but there's going to be those highlights every year, and that's great. I mean, when you and I grew up, there was one of these films every 4 years, right?
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's to have like, you know, 20 a year now. It's already something, you know, and there's definitely at least 4 or 5 of those that are going to stand out and be something worthwhile. So it's huge.
How do you feel about Disney remaking all their classic animation features as live action or CG?
I think it's insulting. You know, I think it's, I mean, it's bad enough when they did it to classics that are long gone, where the creators are far gone and all that. That's bad enough. I mean, but even classics like Psycho and Quo Vadis or any of those, leave those alone. Those are classics. They stand up. They're a testament to the filmmaking of the time, and they should be enjoyed in that format, you know, because that's what made them great. Stories are not a limited resource. You can come up with more. It's that drive of like, let's play it safe and only do things that have a built-in audience. Let's play on nostalgia and things that people already like and will pay to see, even just to hate on it. They'll still go and pay to see it, right? So that part of it, this part of today, where there's so many franchises and so many just retakes and reiterations of the same stuff, that bothers me. But especially, you know, the Lion King thing really bothered me. Especially because here's a good filmmaker, you know, who did just a good enough job on Jungle Book to justify the slew that came later, you know. And I saw Jungle Book and I enjoyed it, but at the same time I know what this means. This means they're gonna do everything now, right? But the shot-by-shot approach of Jungle Book and the approach of removing expressiveness from the characters, which goes against the principles of animation completely. It just bothered me to no end, especially because I know people that worked on it, and they're not in retirement homes. These are people who are still active, you know. And I saw a funniest comment I saw online was somebody said, "Disney, stop raping my adulthood," you know, like it's not even their childhood anymore. It's just like too recent. And do you want to do an epic African story? Come up with a new one, right? Why not? You know, why do you have to do that? They said, we're going to retell Lion King, but they're going to be lions. They're not going to talk or sing. We're going to tell the same story with realistic looking lions, and we're going to try to engage the audience in the same way, but we're going to limit ourselves with that format. I would have been interested in that restriction because it would have been an interesting retelling of that, I think, you know. But to just literally go with your shopping cart and like pick, the shots are good, but the cartooniness is not good, and the expressiveness, no. But I'll take that lighting, but I won't take that. It's just, you know, it just seems it's not real filmmaking. It's copycat. Is what it is. You know, in their defense, I've seen Disney and Pixar lean towards original storytelling now, and we're going to see the results of that in the next few years. And I'm sure there's going to be some true gems that come out of that way of thinking. So that's good. Yeah, but it's very tempting for Disney to sit on something that they know is a gold mine and not do it. You know, like I know, not now, but few years from now, they'll say, how about Toy Story 5, right? Like no one wanted to do 4 and still look great. So let's do 5. And then they'll fall into that temptation again, because how could you not? It's a safe bet, right? And they only will stop when people don't want to see these films anymore because they're bored with this character. I mean, the audience actually needs to start sending a message, we don't want this anymore, for them to stop. And it's a shame because they will eventually make you dislike the characters that you love.
So in Klaus, you kind of have a message in your film. Do you look for stories that kind of help teach the audience a little bit?
I do look for a message that's a universal truth that I believe in, and I think is undisputable, no matter who you are and what your beliefs are. Like Klaus had to work for anybody who was religious and not religious, and it had to be make a statement that you could not disagree with, right? And the statement was kindness is contagious, which we've seen plenty of examples of. That's the in our best, we are that, and that's what a Christmas film should be if it's talking about the Christmas spirit. And I felt that's a good way. So these are, and now our job is to present that premise in the most entertaining and emotionally cohesive way. So if we do our job right, it will be accepted and it will affect our audience emotionally. So yeah, all the films have that underlying kernel of truth, but it's never, I never try to make a statement that can be refuted by, well, I have a different opinion on that fact, because these are things that we all can agree with regardless of. So I try to look for those.
Right. So before that, you left Disney, you started your own studio in Madrid. You mentioned that you worked on a lot of projects that weren't successful. How do you keep going when things aren't going your way?
I will admit there's been a couple times where I said, well, I mean, I think the universe is trying to send me a message, here, and maybe I should just listen to it. Here's how I can best describe it. I know other people that are attempting to do are going on the same path, like they're developing ideas, and they're going around pitching them. But I saw there was a distinctive quality to some of these approaches where they would go in and they would pitch a project with all their passion and they would get a no, and they would leave and they would say, they're idiots. They cannot see this is genius and they cannot, it's on them. And I try to be very careful about not doing that and say, well, what did I do wrong? How come they did not react well? Even if you didn't get it, that's it's my job that they get it. So, so real consequence when you put 6 to 8 months of work into developing a project and you put a pitch together and you spend money on like doing a nice book for presentation and all that. And then you fly to LA and you line up 20 meetings and you go through all of them and you get a no on every one of them. On that flight back, when you're sitting on that plane with the project on your lap, that's when you learn the consequences of failing. Like I put so much time and money and effort into this and I got nothing out of it. So whatever happens, I need to adjust. So next time I do this, I have a better chance. So being open to adjusting and learning. So it was all about, try, fail, adjust, try, fail, adjust, try, fail, adjust. And I just kept doing it. The first pseudo success was Despicable Me. It was not a complete success because we, of course, intended to make the film ourselves. We ended up selling it to Universal, and they went on to produce the actual film. So we can only claim basically the idea, the origin for the story. But at least it was something. It led to a huge franchise, and so we knew that at least we could do that. So now we had to figure out how we do it in a way that we can end up making the film. That took another 12 years until we got there, and then finally we got that chance on Klaus.
If you're enjoying this interview, please subscribe to Animateducated. You might learn something. So that brings me to next thing. You made this short intro to Klaus with the postman who was kind of had a different accent. Was complaining about, setting up this post office, gonna be easy. Originally, he was a poor chimney sweep with nothing. He had nothing. How do you know when your character or story is not working?
You listen mostly. The funny thing is, this was, I mean, you're talking about actually two different versions. The teaser version, it was not yet a poor chimney sweep. We figured that out later, and that's where we put our first reel. And so we had the whole film up on reels, ready for a first screening with Netflix. And we realized that there were things that were not working. We had internal screenings, and we were getting feedback, and we could see that some things were not landing. And some questions kept coming up that you couldn't answer. And when you can answer some basic questions, like if this guy's life sucks so bad back in the big town, and he's gone into an even worse situation by moving here, why don't he just leave? What does he lose by leaving? And I couldn't answer that question. And that's a sign that you did something wrong. As much as we love that poor chimney sweep who had a bone to pick with the universe and all that there was a great character, he was not the character we needed for the story, because essentially, if we were honest with ourselves, it's a story of a guy who's an egotistical person, needs to learn altruism. So you need to start with an egotistical person, and you need to take a risk that he may be unlikable at first, because that's what the movie needs for it to end where it needs to tell the message you want to tell. So kill your own babies and that sort of thing, and we had a bit of a brainstorm with some friends, and one of them came up with this idea: what if he is rich and he has everything to lose if he fails at this? And that kind of felt like it was almost like replacing a battery. Like you could take out that piece of the story, place this stuff, and then everything else seemed to really work. And we, in a very short time, had to basically redo Act One in about 8 weeks and edit it together so we could, have our screening and be a successful first screening, which was.
The old original Toy Story, they had Woody as the domineering toy of power. He's, they took it to the most extreme version of that.
Well, it's always, it happens with these stories when you have a redemption plot, where you have a character who needs to start out not being that nice. Finding that middle ground where he or she is flawed, but it's also someone that's likable enough, or at least we're curious enough about their story that we want to see what happens. It's a trick, and I've seen it fail in some films. Like if you don't find that perfect ground, and some people still think Jesper's too annoying until halfway through the film, and I get that, but that's the story. That's the best version we could land when you're fine tuning that particular character point.
How much of his performance did you use? I mean, he seemed like he would go on and on,
Oh, we got hours of him. We got hours.
You could make Klaus too.
And we could make Klaus too, with a lot of swearing in it too. He would do a take where he would go all just for talking to children and swearing at them and stuff like that. Like, that's hilarious. Can we do one we can use actually? And but yeah, he would. Jason had the potential to turn a line of 3 words into a rant, and he wanted to explore it. And I gave him free range to go and go crazy with it. And we found great things because he did bring in that likability. He did bring in a lot of the what made him likable was those ideas that he improvised and that we put into the film. So I would give him like a fairly draw a script to jump off on, and he would just go crazy. Just for perspective, we record about 70 cues with, for example, J.K. Simmons. He would come in and just, J.K.'s straight professional. He would just get through it and give you great options. He would stay focused, and he would improvise to a certain level, but we would get a lot done. With Jason, if we got 30 cues, we got lucky in 4 hours, because they turned into, a very expanded thing. But it was exactly what we needed. We needed to give him that freedom that he could explore, because without what he brought into the character, he could have come across as a very abrasive character. Right?
So Klaus is your story, and this was your first directing debut. It says on IMDb that you had a co-director.
I had someone who promoted to co-director because he was essentially helping me out. He started as a first assistant director, But eventually we thought, we should recognize the work that he did, so we promoted him to co-director. Yeah.
So what did you learn about directing and working with a co-director?
Well, in this case, the work was not split in the same way that you would expect. For example, Muscar and Clements. It was more like he was helping me manage the immensity of the film, because he, like me, comes from 2D animation, so he was able to take my notes and translate them into actionable production tasks. Because the production crew was not very experienced with animation, so sometimes they didn't understand why some things were asked, and his job was to actually say, no, he meant that in this context, but out of the context changed. He's no longer white, so change that. So he was actually my help in communicating with the rest of the team, making sure that there was inertia to the decisions that we took, and that there was a sense of like we avoided that thing where, like, well, you said white 6 months ago, so here it is, and because you said it, and no one questioned it, and no one actually thought of why we're doing it that way, right? So and that was usually the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge was communication. Where as you said, it's our first film, so we've been a service studio up until now doing smaller jobs, so you have to grow to a huge scale. There was over 300 people working in the studio all of a sudden, and we had to put all the systems in place. We relocated into a bigger space and all that. So a lot of it was about learning by, trial and error. We are still, even today, like going over or aftermath and like what could we do better next time and that. But so communication was key. What I learned was it doesn't matter how much I try to write something in a descriptive way, there's always room for misinterpretation. There's always room for so spending the time to tell the people not just what I need you to do, but why we're doing it and what we're hoping the audience to get out of it, and what emotional we're trying to get out of them, because everything influenced that, like your shot composition, your performance, and all that. So I learned to spend a bit more time on that. Eventually, even though at first there was a lot of misunderstandings, I was like, how can this be misunderstood? I couldn't explain clearer than that, when it turns out you always can, think of it this way. This is like that moment in that movie, and they make you feel that way. We're trying to do the same thing. So, so you can never underestimate the importance of good communication. And that's something I feel we're going to be working on that for the next few films. Like, it's going to take time to finesse that, and there's usually, director is being moved around from a meeting to the next. So they want you to get it done, right? Brief, review. And then you're like, and then you're like, well, if I don't do the job here, this person is likely to not get the whole picture, and then next time review, instead of having 2 takes, we might have 5, so in the end, it makes more sense to spend the time with. That was the biggest learning point, and it was my first time as a writer too, so that took a lot of I still don't know how to be a writer and director at the same time. So in this film, I ended up being a writer at night, so I need to do better next time. We need to allow for writing time somehow.
You have a very young crew there, but you also have some older professionals that have came in.
Right.
How did that, I teach animation in school, and I am just, it upsets me when I mention like in the scene in Blues Brothers, when they go in and they do, and they look at me like, what's Blues Brothers?
I took it upon myself to learn stuff, like, because what as an animator serves you well, but it's definitely not enough. Like, you don't know, you cannot just be such a good animator that you're a director. That never happens, right? So there's a whole pile of knowledge that I didn't have. So I took the time to educate myself, and I knew failing was going to be part of it, but so I tried to force myself to watch the good movies, but I especially learned a lot from the bad ones. I found there's a lot more to learn from seeing something fail, understanding why it's failing, and going through the exercise of offering a solution of how it could have worked. What I'm trying to say is I try to stay current and watch as much as I can. So I can probably give a reference that's more close to their own experience than that. So I try to avoid the reference that make me feel old, is what I'm saying.
I guess Netflix said, "We like it, go." And did you just scramble to find all the people, or you already had most of the crew?
Option A on that one. Yeah, we definitely scramble.
Okay.
Yeah, because you don't, I mean, it's 0 to 100. You get a green light, and also, this keeps happening. I don't think it's a thing with Netflix, but with the industry in general. You take so long to close the deal that you start eating away into your pre-production time, and that happened. And then we found out that the time we should have had to, figure out the story and the look of it, just went right on top of the actual having to make the film. And this was a seasonal film, and the release date was not going to move. So it became quite a scramble. And it's, I mean, where do you find people that do 2D? And there's a lot of calling back old friends. There's a lot of reaching out to the schools like your programs to see who's up and coming and who could be integrated into a team with regional amount of training, And there's a lot of training too. I mean, we had to train whole teams. Like most of the cleanup team was trained in-house because we found it was better to just train our own crew than to try and find veteran cleanup people who are willing to relocate. It was our budget didn't allow for it, and it was actually hard to do that. And also, we've worked with people who just too set in their ways and have an issue with going digital, things like that. So it's easier to take someone who's already used to doing that, and so we went that way. Our whole layout team had to be trained because layout does not exist as a profession. So what we did is we took visual development artists who know about staging and composition, but they don't know the filmmaking and the camera language. So we had to train them on that. And that was done in record time on the job, because they know the basics, but they don't know complex camera work and things like that. So we had to work hard to get everybody up and ready. But a lot of it was just, on the job, just trying to get there the best we could. And some shots got stuck in that limbo where we've tried this shot like 20 times and the camera's still not working, and what are we going to do? And so a bit of panic and all that stuff, that happened. So it was not smooth production, but then again, I've never been in a smooth production. Have you?
Well, I only had one job that I think went really well. I did it in a week, and I was amazed. I was just like, "That's it? Do you like it? I just tweak that." That was only one. So I wanted to ask you more about your team. I was just looking at some of the people. I don't even know who they are, so I was looking at them, like Torsten Schrank, who's your lead character designer, and
Right.
Sergio Martins, who was the animation supervisor. He did something called Poet Anderson Dreamwalker from
Right.
2014, and I just watched it last night, and I was like, I didn't even know that was there. So
I know, I feel the same way. Well, that's how I found about him. That sure, which I don't understand why it hasn't gone viral, by the way. I think it's gorgeous.
yeah.
But I think it was marketed in a very weird way. Like, he was put on iTunes for a long time. So if you don't have an iTunes account, you can watch it, and then only recently it's being made public, And I was looking online for, good talent at the time. And this was before we began production on Klaus. And I came across someone had pirated these and put it on Vimeo. So there was a version, and there were Spanish subtitles, so I have a good idea of what country was the guy who did it, Where, so anyway, so this was put on Vimeo, and I saw it, and I was like, how do I not know about this, right? And I researched it, and I found out it was it was commissioned, but it was awarded to these two twin brothers, Sergio and Edgar Martins. And I reached out to them, and I said, would you like to come to Madrid? And so we brought them to Madrid, and and I basically got to know them and know, what they did. And it turns out, one of them was very strong with layout, cinematography, camera work, and the other one's specialty was animation. And they kind of were this power, twin group of people that could do a whole thing like that, And I And I became very convinced that these were essential to the team. So I offered Edgar the position of head of story, and Sergio became supervising animator on Alba. And man, I have not regretted that decision. I mean, they were fantastic, and they're still with us. And Torsten, I worked with for a long time now. I've known since he came out of school from Gobelano way back when I don't think I even had the studio back then. And I followed his stuff, and I worked together a few times with him. But he's one of those rare animals that can, like usually when you deal with character designers, you either have someone who's a concept guy or someone who's a good developer. Like there's people who just have this wild imagination, throw wild concepts at you, but you rarely can just take them and use them in a film. Someone still has to make sense out of them volumetrically and all that. And so usually have a team of people that do this, but Torsten is one of those few people that I know that can do the whole range of it. And because he's so prolific, there were a few other secondary character designers, but he was basically, I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't disagree with me when I told you that basically, the bulk of the character design of the film is handled entirely by Torsten. And not only that, he became the custodian of the graphic style. Like once the character design was done, he went around animation and cleanup, doing drawovers for everybody and making sure everything was kept on model and on graphic style. And thanks to him, the movie looks that consistent, among other things.
So how was it? I mean, the limitation I see sometimes with 2D is staying on model. So how do you accomplish that? Do you just look for people that stay on model, or are there some?
I mean, there's when I was at Disney, I was surprised to see that it was very left to the supervising animators, and it depended on what film you were at. Like if you're working with Kirk and Gary on Hunchback of Notre Dame, they came from story, so they put a lot more attention on story and layout and camera work, and I kind of let the supervisors do their thing, right? But on that film, they asked James Baxter and Tony Fucile to do a draw over all the character designs for unifying the style, and I think that was a huge improvement. I could see the difference, Other films I worked on, like Tarzan, did not have that, and I was always concerned, like, I don't want to see Tarzan and Tantor in the same shot. They look like they're from different worlds, and we could have really used that unification thing, That doesn't bother people, but it started to bother me. So I learned that having that one person that kind of encompasses the style of the film, that well of wisdom that everybody can go to and say, hey, and then he in turn will train others that will also pass that information, was extremely important to the cohesion of the graphic style of the characters. So we tried to do that, and it worked out. And I think we found our way. I mean, as long as we have access to talent like these, we'll continue doing it that way.
Okay. So, so now that we have, I mean, back when you and I were at school, we didn't have cell phones that could take pictures and do everything else. Do you use any reference footage? Does your animators like act out something in front of and record themselves and just kind of see the timing and the motion? Or
some did. We posted some stuff on our YouTube channel, some side-by-side references, and we actually found a few more, and they were in the process of convincing the artists to let us release them, because they never shot these for the purposes of being put online. So, but some did. I always encourage the artists to whatever tools they use, make sure that by the time you sit down to draw, you know what you're going to try to attempt. So I would say you can shoot yourself on video, you can act it out in front of a mirror. That's what I did. You can do thumbnails. So everybody had a different approach, and I never liked the idea that you need to impose like a right way of doing it. As long as when you get to drawing, you have a goal, a clear goal in mind, then I'm fine with that. So when I started on this film, I was very aware that this is the film that I would love to work on as an animator. And I knew that I had to convince myself that it was never going to happen. So because my duties were too many in other things. So the paradox that if I want to work on a film that I would love to work as an animator, I need to make it happen. But I'm on the other side of the mirror, then it kind of sucks. John Masker tells me he's doing a short these days. I'm like, I think I know you feel like you're postponing that until one day you'll have all the time in the world to do your own art. I will do some. I did a lot of boards that I did because it was needed, and that was a relief because at least I could draw. But then because that was my only relief, I would overwork my boards way too much, and you know, because I was so starved for drawing, and so it was a good and a bad thing. But on the next film, if we get better organized, I would love to find the time to. But it's hard because I feel like the first few weeks when you take a new job, they're doing all your bad work. So you don't just get to jump in and do a shot and be great. You know, you have to do a few bad shots first. And if I only do that, then I only have bad shots in the film, and I don't want that either. So.
Right. Again, I'm going to thank you again for those videos on your YouTube channel. They're great. They're so good. And I love the one where you actually went to Finland or Norway to find the voice of Margu.
Right.
Tell us, do you have any funny stories about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was halfway through the film that I realized, oh crap, this works a lot better if she doesn't speak English. And then I went to my producers and I said, we need to find a little Sami girl who can perform. And they looked at me like I was crazy. You know, I mean, like I said, it's not hard enough as it is, right? But man, to their credit, they went out and they found the Neda, the little girl. She had already been a performer on live action films, and they set this trip up. And I said, well, I'm up here. We never had a proper research trip, so let me try and learn as much about the Sami as I can, because I would hate for the Sami to see this film and think, you know, here they go again making a joke out of us, right? So, and when I got there, I learned that from them. They said, we you know, if we ever get depicted in the film, where it's just, you know, like they said literally for us, Frozen is a joke, because you know, they said the reindeers are acting like dogs and like what's happening, you know, and I was like, okay, well, whatever we do, let's not do that. And it was funny because when we were designing the reindeer, my designer, who was not Thorsten, he kept showing me these cartoony reindeers. Like, no, they need to be animals, you know, they don't smile, they're not angry, just behave like actual reindeers. And it was like, it's never been done before in animation, you know. Animals are supposed to have personalities. And I'm like, no, they're animals, you know. And I learned a few facts while I was there about reindeer and the Sami, and we tried to incorporate as much of that as we could into the film. Some things we couldn't, like there were things like we hired a consultant who was very strict about all the things that we should do, and she kept saying all the people in the same family have to have the same kind of hat. And we're like, well, you know, we need a variety of shapes here and all that, so we're going to try to do our best, and we tried to conform as much as we could, but not as strict as she wanted it to be. And she said the stripes, the color stripes on their sleeves in their clothing, they're the history of their family. So there has to be many, many color stripes on their sleeves. And I'm like, lady, we got to draw these. So, so there's going to be only a couple stripes. They're a very, very new family, you know, they just moved to the town or something. So, but it was important to me that if we took a license, we knew that we were taking a license. We knew that, yes, I know, but because, you know. And then I've spoken to Sami people since, and they reached out to us, and it's been very gratifying to see that they were proud to be represented in the film that way. So, and then Neda was fantastic. Neda was, it was funny because during the recording sessions, you could swear it was exactly the same relationship as Jesper and Margu. She didn't speak English, I didn't speak Sami. We had translator, but a lot of it was pantomime, and a lot of it was just good chemistry. Like she understood what I needed, and she made this character come alive. And she's everybody's favorite character in the film, you know. It's so much fun.
And yeah, it's really a nice. I think this film, people are going to see it this year and be like instant classic for it.
Fingers crossed. That's the gold standard for any Christmas film. It's a repeat viewing that says if you landed it or not. So
I had something to do with Santa Claus. I animated every year for like, I don't know, 10, 20, a lot of years. I worked at Will Vinton Studios, and I
Mm,
did on the M&M commercials there. Um, they always show that one where the M&Ms meet Santa, and
right.
they do exist, and he does exist, and they faint. So I'm kind of like, I always see it every year. It's there, and I go, oh, okay, well, that's good. They're still playing it. So you did a voice acting as well on Klaus.
Well, it was not a choice. It kind of, like I said, we scrambled a lot on this film. We did, and we improvised a lot. And it turns out that we had amazing casting directors. I mean, they were the ones that suggested um, um, all of our characters, really. I mean, some were already on our list, but in some cases, like in Jason, it was their suggestion, and I was like, let me look into this, and it turned out they had great instincts for what the film needed. The only exception was for Magdalene, the what people know her as Pumpkin, the little lady. She used to have another name. She used to be called Magdalene, but because the only time she was referred to by her father was by her nickname, we ended up saying, well, clearly we don't need the name Magdalene, so she's Pumpkin now. So forgive me if I still call her Magdalene. She was only supposed to say the word mine throughout the film, but she was supposed to convey a range of emotions with that one word, and we briefed. We gave a character description, and we gave it to the casting directors, and they sent back a list of what their suggestions. And I feel like in this case that there was a misunderstanding somewhere, because we got a list of people who sounded like girls who were trying to sell toothpaste. It was like mine. It was like 20-year-olds who sounded like, they were. I was like, this is complete. Like, she's supposed to sound like a big matron kind of thing, and I couldn't get that. And somehow all the options we had were wrong for it. And then we tried again, and we got better voices, but the performance wasn't what I needed. And there was this particular session in which I was instructing this actress, like, give it more of this, and I would do it like me, put more weight into that. And then we didn't quite get what we needed. But at the end of the session, my editor came to me and he said, you know what, I think you should just do it. And I mean, you're doing it already. I'm like, but it's gonna sound like a dude. It's like, well, we'll play with the pitch a bit and it'll be fine. And I was very skeptical, and I was very afraid that I would be accused of being a man who takes a woman's part in today's world, and but then in the end it was like, okay, I guess I'm doing it now. And somehow by extension, her counterpart in the other family, who's only has grunts and screams and stuff like that, they let me know, my team let me know, oh, by the way, you're also recording that today. So but it was kind of last resort, but it kind of worked out. It's not definitely something I intend to pursue in it. I mean, looks like if you have a character who's mentally challenged, I'm your man. That's I think I became an animator because if I ever considered acting, I knew I couldn't do it. I mean, it's like, performing live is not my thing, and it's been proven time and time again. But thankfully, it was just one word, and it didn't have any R's, which would have given away my accent. So it was fine,
Well, hope you enjoyed part 1, because coming up next is part 2. And be sure to subscribe if you're not a subscriber already on Animateducated. Thanks for watching.